Hello friends. Tonight, we gently drift into a world of ancient myths and timeless whispers. You are wrapped in a soft hush, as if the evening air itself is cradling you. The sky above is a deep velvet, scattered with stars that twinkle like gentle lanterns hanging from the boughs of a celestial tree. A faint breeze carries the scent of moss and pine, and somewhere nearby, water trickles in a quiet stream, its ripples glowing under the light of an unseen moon. If you enjoy this story, you might quietly tap like when you wake up tomorrow morning. Now dim the lights, curl up under your blankets, and let's glide into tonight's gentle tale. Long ago, before time's river had carved the paths we know, the worlds of gods and mortals were held together by a delicate balance. At the center of all, Yggdrasil stretched its roots and branches into the endless sky and deep earth, connecting realms both light and shadow. Its leaves shimmered faintly like emerald fireflies, and the great tree breathed with a slow rhythm, its life force entwined with the fate of gods. Far above Midgard, two tribes of deities walked the golden paths of Asgard and Vanaheim. The Asir, gods of war and wisdom, made their home among shining halls and silver skies. Their laughter and songs often rang like distant thunder, powerful and commanding. In contrast, the Vanir were keepers of fertility and peace, their gardens flowing with streams of light and flowers that never faded. To them, every petal and blade of grass held sacred magic, and their voices carried the calm of summer meadows. But beneath this surface calm, a faint tension had begun to stir. Like the first sigh of wind before a storm, whispers moved between the realms. It began as nothing, just a faint unease, a flicker in the great tree's emerald glow. Yet Yggdrasil felt it. Its roots trembled slightly in the dark soil, as if bracing for the tremors to come. One night, as the moon drifted high and full, a soft mist curled through the fields of Vanaheim. The Vanir, gentle and patient, looked to the horizon where Asgard's distant towers glimmered like watchful stars. "The balance feels fragile," murmured Njord, god of the sea, as he stood barefoot on the sands, the waves lapping gently at his feet. Freyr and Freyja, twin deities of growth and beauty, walked beside him in silence, their hearts heavy yet calm. In Asgard, Odin's single eye peered across the realms. He could sense a shift in the air, faint but undeniable. It was not anger, nor was it hatred, more a quiet rift, like a river slowly carving its way through rock. Yet still, the skies above Asgard remained serene, and the stars carried on their patient dance. And so the worlds waited. Yggdrasil's leaves rustled softly in a wind that only the gods could feel, as if the great tree itself was whispering, "The twilight of harmony begins." In the gentle heart of Vanaheim, time moved like a soft current, slow and unhurried. The land was awash in a tapestry of color-rolling meadows of wildflowers in every hue, their petals kissed by dew that shimmered like 1,000 tiny stars. Rivers wound gracefully through the fields, glowing faintly as if lit from within, carrying the blessings of the Vanir to every corner of their realm. Here, the gods of fertility and harmony tended to the earth and sky with quiet devotion. Njord, lord of the seas, would stand at the water's edge each morning, his presence as calming as the tide itself. He would listen to the rhythm of the waves, their rise and fall echoing in his chest like a second heartbeat. Freyr, his golden hair catching the sunlight, walked among the forests, encouraging trees to stretch taller, fruits to ripen sweeter, and the animals to thrive in abundance. And Freyja, radiant and serene, gathered the softest petals to weave garlands for the children of the land, her every movement leaving trails of light in the air. But even in this realm of gentle beauty, an unease stirred beneath the surface. Freyja had felt at first an almost imperceptible shiver that ran through the flowers when a faint breeze passed. At night, the stars seemed a little sharper, their glow edged with a coolness she couldn't explain. She shared her worries with Freyr as they stood by a glowing brook, the water flowing over smooth stones like liquid crystal. "The air feels strained," she murmured, her voice as soft as the wind rustling the reeds. "As though something unseen is watching us, waiting." Freyja nodded but spoke no words. Instead, he reached out to touch the trunk of an ancient birch tree, listening to the sap's slow, steady flow within. Even the tree felt unsettled, though its leaves still danced as if in joy. The Vanir were patient, deeply tied to the rhythms of nature. They knew that balance could shift like the tide, subtle at first, then swift and unstoppable. For now, they chose to nurture their lands, weaving calming magics into the soil and streams to soothe what they could not yet name. Above them, the sky stretched endlessly, painted in shades of lavender and pale gold. White birds glided soundlessly across the heavens, their wings cutting through the air like whispers. The sun dipped low, and its light grew soft, casting long shadows that melted gently into the earth. At the edge of Vanaheim, where land met the glowing sea, Njord gazed westward. He could just make out the faint silhouette of Asgard's towers, distant yet imposing. The Aesir grow restless, he thought, though he spoke aloud to no one. His words were carried away by the sea breeze, which sighed and curled around him like a quiet warning. And still, Vanaheim breathed in peace, fragile but present. Its rivers continued to sing softly, and the air hummed with the magic of growth and life. Yet, somewhere deep beneath the earth, the roots of Yggdrasil quivered ever so slightly, sensing the first faint vibrations of a coming storm. Far above the fertile glow of Vanaheim, the land of Asgard stood in quiet majesty. Its high walls shimmered like pale silver under a calm moonlit sky. Towers stretched upward, their spires catching the faint light of distant stars. And beyond the gates, the halls of the Aesir glimmered with soft firelight that flickered gently against polished stone. Yet despite the serenity of the night, a sense of stillness lingered in the air, like a deep breath held too long. The Aesir were gods of strength, wisdom, and battle. In this moment, however, their mighty voices were hushed. The sound of soft leather boots echoed faintly in the grand hall as Odin, the All-Father, walked alone beneath the carved rafters. His long cloak brushed the floor, and his single eye burned like an ember, seeing far beyond what lay before him. Outside, a cold breeze drifted through Asgard's courtyards, carrying with it the scent of pine and frost. Odin paused at the threshold of the Bifrost, the rainbow bridge that arched across the void, connecting the realms. The colors glowed faintly under his gaze, their vibrancy subdued as though the bridge itself sensed the tension rippling through Yggdrasil's great branches. Thor, the god of thunder, stood nearby, leaning silently on Mjolnir, his hammer. Normally, Thor's laughter would roll like a summer storm, and his presence would crackle with the energy of lightning. But now, his brow furrowed and his hands tightened on the hammer's handle. "You feel it too," Odin said quietly, though his voice carried the weight of deep rivers. Thor nodded, his golden red hair catching the faint glow of starlight. "It's like the calm before a thunderclap. The Vanir, their patience may be thinning." Odin's gaze drifted upward to the heavens. "They are not warriors by nature, but the balance is delicate. Even the gentlest current can turn into a rushing tide." Elsewhere in Asgard, Frigg, Odin's queen, walked through her garden of crystal flowers. The petals emitted a faint, soothing hum as she passed. Yet even here, where peace usually bloomed, the air felt cooler. A single petal floated down from its stem and landed silently in her palm. It shimmered, then faded like a dying star. She whispered, almost to herself, "The weave grows fragile." As night deepened, the Aesir gathered in the great hall. Their voices were low, like distant waves against a rocky shore. Even the ever-bold Tyr, god of law and heroic glory, spoke with an unusual calmness, though there was no clamor of war horns. Yet each god felt it, a soft vibration beneath their feet, as if the very stones of Asgard were listening to something far away. And so they waited, with weapons set aside for now. The moon sailed high, its pale glow reflected in the polished shields lining the hall. Somewhere, a soft wind stirred the banners above, their cloth whispering like an old song. Above and below, Yggdrasil stretched on, its roots brushing the depths and its branches cradling the skies. The tree's sap flowed slowly, glowing faintly, as though lit by embers. It felt the weight of Asgard's stillness, just as it had felt the gentle unease of Vanaheim. The world held its breath, and even the stars seemed to pause in their eternal dance. The days that followed unfolded softly, like a slow tide rolling onto a quiet shore. The realms above and below seemed caught in a gentle pause, yet deep within Yggdrasil's sprawling roots, the faintest tremors of discord began to stir. Great trees' leaves whispered in the wind, their voices light as a sigh, carrying the earliest echoes of a rift forming between the Aesir and Vanir. In Vanaheim, the air hung heavy with the scent of late summer blossoms. Freyja walked among her sacred groves, her fingers trailing lightly over petals that shimmered like molten gold. The flowers still bloomed, but their soft hum felt strained, like harp songs played a touch too high. At the edge of a tranquil pond, she knelt and gazed into her reflection. The water, usually smooth as glass, rippled without wind. "I hear it," she murmured, though no one stood nearby. "The branches are restless." Across the realms, in Asgard's shining halls, Odin stood at the high balcony of Valaskjalf, his lone eye fixed on the horizon. Beneath the silver sweep of the skies, the All-Father sensed threads of unease stretching thin between their world and the Vanir's. He knew well that even gentle gods could be drawn to conflict if trust withered. "The earth is quiet now," Frigg whispered as she approached, her presence soft as moonlight. "But quiet does not always mean peace," Odin nodded gravely. "It is the silence before snow breaks from a heavy bough." As days melted into nights, small gestures between the two tribes grew colder. A mist offering, a gift sent back unopened. Words meant to soothe became edged with distrust. Yet there were no raised voices, no harsh cries, only the subtle tension of two currents flowing in opposite directions. One twilight, Njord, standing on a misty shoreline in Vanaheim, sent out a call to Asgard on the whispering wind. His words were gentle, laced with longing for harmony. "We are of the same root, children of the tree. Must the branches break?" But his message reached Odin as a faint echo, carried by the northern lights weaving softly across the heavens. The All-Father, thoughtful yet wary, closed his eye and breathed deeply. The night sky above him was vast and still, though a faint, cold star had appeared in the east, an omen of change, subtle yet piercing. And so the gods of both realms carried on their quiet watchfulness. Stars wheeled endlessly overhead, and the glowing Bifrost stretched between their lands like a frozen river of light. Beneath its arch, the worlds felt poised on a delicate edge. Even Yggdrasil, eternal and patient, shuddered ever so slightly. A single leaf broke free from its highest bough and drifted down, glowing faintly as it fell slowly, softly into the waiting dark below. The first quiet waves of war unfolded not with clashing steel or thunderous roars, but like a slow, heavy rain that seeps into the earth unnoticed. The balance between Asgard and Vanaheim, so delicate and long-held, began to shift. And yet, across the realms, the world still wore its serene mask. Rivers sparkled, flowers swayed, and the stars moved in their ancient, graceful arcs. In the hushed meadows of Vanaheim, Freyr stood beneath a sky brushed with pale rose and silver. His hand rested on the hilt of his shining sword, a weapon forged to protect life, not to end it. He did not wish for battle, but the undercurrent of tension pressed against his thoughts like an insistent tide. "All things grow and fade," he whispered, watching the dandelion seeds scatter into the evening air. But must we hasten? They're fading? In Asgard, Thor's footsteps echoed like distant thunder in the great hall. Though his voice was silent, his presence carried the weight of a storm building far beyond the horizon. The Aesir warriors moved carefully through the corridors, their polished shields reflecting torchlight that flickered like fireflies. Even the boldest among them spoke softly, as if afraid to awaken some fragile thread that held the realms together. It was not long before the first embers of conflict flared. A skirmish began at the edge of the realms, born not from hatred, but from misunderstanding, an offering taken as an insult, a message misread as a threat. There were no roaring battle horns, only a faint sound like wind rustling through dry leaves as the gods clashed for the first time. In the misty fields, magic blossomed as Vanir enchantments rippled across the grass, weaving barriers of light and healing. The Aesir answered with measured force, their power flowing like rivers of fire tempered by ice. And yet, even in this struggle, the land itself seemed unwilling to bear witness to violence. The air grew heavy with mist, muffling the sounds of conflict, and Yggdrasil's branches quaked as if trying to embrace both tribes in its great arms. Night fell softly over the battlefields. Wounded gods and spirits retreated beneath a moon that watched in quiet sorrow. Stars flickered faintly. Above, their light veiled by thin clouds that drifted like gauze across the heavens. And as the realms rested, their energy spent, a strange calm settled, an uneasy peace, delicate as the first frost on an autumn leaf. But in the deep roots of the world tree, unseen and patient, tiny sparks glowed. They were not yet flames, but the seeds of something greater, something that would one day roar across all creation. When dawn rose over the realms, it did so softly, as if reluctant to disturb the fragile calm that had settled. The sunlight fell in pale gold ribbons across the meadows of Vanaheim, where dew clung to every blade of grass like tiny crystal lanterns. The gods on both sides had stepped back from the edge, their voices quieter, their movements slower, as though the earth itself had urged them to pause and breathe. In Asgard's high halls, Odin gathered the Aesir beneath a vaulted ceiling carved with the stories of creation. His single eye, deep as a still lake, swept over the faces of his kin. There was weariness there, but also thoughtfulness afaint. Recognition that the price of further conflict might be too steep for even gods to bear. "We have tested one another," Odin spoke, his voice low yet carrying through the hall like the soft rumble of distant thunder. But a root cannot thrive if its branches are at war. Meanwhile, across the Bifrost's glowing arch, Vanir met in their sunlit groves. Freyja's hands glowed faintly as she touched the petals of a pale blue flower, coaxing it to bloom even as her thoughts wandered to the tension that still coiled around her heart. Freyr stood beside her, his expression calm but tinged with quiet resolve. "Peace," Freyja said softly, "is a fragile bloom, but perhaps we can tend it together." The two tribes began to send envoys, not warriors. They moved carefully, like deer stepping across a frozen lake, each gesture weighted with meaning. Gifts were exchanged: silvered apples from Adun's, orchard golden wheat from Vanaheim's endless fields. Words, too, flowed more gently now, woven with care and hope. In time, the Aesir and Vanir agreed upon a fragile truce. They would send hostages to one another's halls, not as prisoners, but as bridges of trust. Njord and his children, Freyr and Freyja, came to Asgard, while Henir and Mimir walked the soft paths of Vanaheim. Though the air still held traces of unease, it began to sweeten, like the earth after a cleansing rain. The gods spoke not of victory or defeat, but of weaving a bond that might hold the realms in balance. High above, Yggdrasil stirred. Its leaves rustled in a wind scented with new growth. The great tree felt the flow of energy settle, roots loosening from the tension that had gripped them. For now, the storm had passed. Yet deep within the dark soil, Faint embers glimmered, hidden from even the keenest eyes. They would not burn today nor tomorrow, but someday those seeds planted in this first great war would awaken. For now, though, the gods walked gently beneath soft skies. Their voices were calm, their footsteps light, as if wary of waking the earth from its delicate dream. The days that followed were hushed and tender, as though the realms themselves exhaled after holding their breath too long. In the gardens of Vanaheim, golden fields rippled gently under a serene sky, while in Asgard's gleaming halls, soft torchlight flickered against polished stone. Both tribes of gods moved carefully now, speaking in low tones and watching one another with wary respect. Yet beneath this newfound calm, subtle threads of fate wove together in ways even the wise could not fully see. The truce had been forged, the alliances sealed, but deep in the roots of Yggdrasil, something faint and restless stirred small vibrations that went unnoticed above, like the earliest murmur of a coming quake. Freyja walked along the edge of a glowing river in Asgard, the water shimmering like liquid starlight as he trailed his fingers across its surface. Though welcomed among the Aesir, he felt the distance in their eyes an invisible barrier neither side dared to breach too quickly. Still, he whispered to the water, sending a blessing of growth and harmony into the land. In Vanaheim, Henner wandered through the quiet groves. Birds sang softly overhead, yet he could not shake the echo of Odin's words spoken before he departed. Even peace carries its own dangers if roots are shallow. And so the days unfurled, delicate as spun glass. Gods of both realms learned from one another. The Aesir's wisdom in battle and law mingled with the Vanir's deep understanding of nature and magic. Together, they wove a stronger bond than either tribe could have imagined in the days before the war. But destiny is not so easily soothed. In the far reaches of the cosmos, the Norns keepers of fate watched the shifting threads with quiet hands. Urd, Verdandi, and Skuld dipped their fingers into the well beneath Yggdrasil, and ripples spread outward, carrying a faint whisper. The seeds are sown, Ragnarök will bloom. Yet the gods above heard nothing. To them, the world seemed whole. Once more, stars spun gently in the heavens, and a soft breeze carried the scent of pine and honey through both Asgard and Vanaheim. For now at least there was peace, and the earth embraced it like a mother cradling her sleeping child. Still, deep within the shadows of Yggdrasil's ancient roots, tiny sparks pulsed faintly in the dark. They were not yet fire, but they waited, patient and silent, for the day their glow would awaken and consume the worlds. The years drifted onward like petals floating down a quiet stream, and for a time, the gods of Asgard and Vanaheim moved in harmony. Together, they shaped the realms with their combined gifts, the Aesir weaving strength and order into the fabric of the cosmos, and the Vanir nurturing growth and abundance wherever their feet touched the earth. Odin, all-father of the Aesir, walked often beneath Yggdrasil's boughs, his cloak whispering softly against the roots. He gazed upward, watching as the great tree's leaves shimmered in the light of distant stars. Though peace had settled over the realms, his single eye could still glimpse faint shadows curling at the edges of fate threads, dark and delicate, like storm clouds forming beyond the horizon. Freyr, too, felt the subtle weight of the future. As he stood in the fertile meadows of Asgard, golden grain swayed around him, their stalks humming faintly in the evening breeze. He closed his eyes and listened, not to the song of the fields, but to something deeper. A silence beneath the harmony, a quiet pause between heartbeats. The gods continued their gentle weaving of alliances. Freyja, with her beauty and magic, taught the Aesir the secrets of Cider, a craft that connected mind, body, and spirit in threads of unseen power. In return, Tyr shared with the Vanir the strength of oaths and laws, binding their words as tightly as a chain of gold. And yet, even as bonds grew stronger, something fragile lingered in the air. It was not distrust, nor was it fear, but a soft awareness that all things, even peace, have their season. In the far north, the wind carried faint murmurs of a distant time to come. The Norns, ever watchful, sat by the well of Urd, weaving with pale fingers strands of destiny so fine they seemed made of light. Skuld, keeper of what will be, paused and whispered to her sisters. Even now, the first notes of Ragnarök hum beneath the soil. But above, the stars shone gently, unaware of their coming fall. In Asgard's great hall, firelight flickered across the faces of gods as they feasted and laughed in quiet tones. In Vanaheim, rivers still glowed softly under the moon's silver gaze, and birds sang lullabies to the sleeping fields. It was the long calm before the end, a hush so deep it seemed the world itself dared not breathe too loudly. And in this stillness, time felt infinite. Yggdrasil swayed faintly in the night wind, its branches cradling the stars, its roots clutching the earth. It knew what the gods did not, that the story of their first great war was only a prologue to the greater. Twilight waiting on the horizon. For now, though, the worlds rested. The air was cool and fragrant with pine. The heavens brushed in hues of indigo and gold. All was quiet, all was waiting. And now, dear friend, you are still and calm, floating softly on the edge of dreams. The echoes of gods and ancient trees fade into a tender hush, as if the universe itself has dimmed its lights to let you rest. The stars above are steady, their glow gentle and soothing, like 1,000 tiny lanterns swaying in the night breeze. Somewhere far away, the branches of Yggdrasil rustle softly, but their sound is muted now, like the whisper of silk against your skin. You feel your body sink deeper into your bed, the blankets warm and protective around you. Each breath you take grows slower, longer, and more peaceful, as if the air itself has turned sweet and light. There is no hurry here, no need to hold on to thoughts or stories. They drift away like leaves floating down a quiet river, vanishing into the soft darkness. The gods themselves seem to have fallen silent now, their voices replaced by the steady, soothing rhythm of your own heartbeat. Imagine a soft meadow beneath you, endless and safe, where you can rest for as long as you wish. The air is cool but comforting, scented faintly with pine and wildflowers. And above, the sky glows in hues of pale lavender and gold. As you lie there, the last wisps of the tale dissolve, and you are left with nothing but stillness, a vast, gentle stillness that cradles you like a parent holding a sleeping child. There is only peace now and the promise of soft, quiet dreams. You are safe, you are calm, you are home. Sleep takes you gently, carrying you into the velvet embrace of the night.